Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Chrissia Tabakaru. I own a small fertility business called Cycle and Flow, and I'm really excited to be working with my fertility labs. So in this video, we're going to talk about what happens in your cycle hormone-wise. What are the major hormones and how do they affect your cycle? So at the beginning of your cycle, follicle stimulating hormone or FSH starts rising. This hormone is produced in your brain in the pituitary gland. That hormone starts developing a cohort of follicles inside your ovaries. Follicles are what house your eggs. As that cohort grows, a dominant follicle is selected. When that dominant follicle is selected, it starts producing estrogen from your ovaries. So estrogen starts rising over here. Once estrogen hits a threshold level, it triggers the release of luteinizing hormone, or LH. LH is produced in this surge pattern, and LH is also a pituitary gland hormone, so it comes from your brain. And that means that your brain and your ovaries are always talking throughout the menstrual cycle. Luteinizing hormone quite literally luteinizes that dominant follicle, and in that process, an egg is released. The luteinization of a follicle just means that it starts the process of turning the follicle into something called a corpus luteum. So after the egg is released, the shell, the follicle, is turned into this temporary gland called the corpus luteum because of luteinizing hormone. Once the corpus luteum is formed, it starts producing progesterone. So you can see that progesterone is rising and it really dominates the second half of your cycle, the luteal phase. And progesterone is also produced in your ovaries from the corpus luteum, which is that leftover follicle after ovulation has taken place. So the follicular phase starts on day 1 of menstruation because that's when follicle stimulating hormone is starting to rise. And the follicular phase lasts all the way to when ovulation happens. When ovulation happens, the day after starts your luteal phase. And that's named after the corpus luteum, that temporary gland. The corpus luteum also produces some estrogen, so you have a secondary peak of estrogen in the luteal phase. The corpus luteum has a lifespan. At the end of that lifespan, it starts degrading. When it degrades, progesterone drops and estrogen drops. Now, progesterone during the luteal phase suppresses the production of FSH and LH from the brain. So you can see that those two are at baseline during the luteal phase. But when progesterone drops, as that corpus luteum is degrading, you can see that that suppression is lifted and a new cycle starts. Progesterone gives the endometrial lining in the uterus structural support. So when progesterone is removed, that will trigger the start of your period. If implantation happens from a fertilized egg, it will produce a hormone called HCG. That's the pregnancy hormone. That hormone talks to the corpus luteum in the ovary, and it tells it to not degrade, to continue producing progesterone. So if you are pregnant and implantation has happened, this progesterone will continue to stay up. It will not drop, and therefore you won't get your period. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something new. This information is so vital to have when you're learning to chart your cycle, when you're trying to conceive, even when you're trying to avoid pregnancy. It's also really important to understand all of these different hormones when you're using hormone tests at home, because if you know what those hormone tests are looking for, you can really use them as tools. See you in the next video.